Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the fourth week of our summer Tech Bytes program here being offered at the Schaumburg Township Library, where we are diving more deeper into different computer science topics. Over the spring, we've covered a bunch of things related to programming language of Python, tackled problems, made awesome projects, and now are continuing with that focus throughout this month of July and the summer, and June, and are already talking about July. Today's the last day of June and going into July as well. Today, we're going to continue to work on our web product development skills, continue to work on our project, which we started in the first week of web product development and building our skill set even further. As always, guys, thank you so much for coming out here today. It is always great to see. It's a great turnout. And without any further ado, let's get on started. You guys know who we are. My name is Ramsey. You guys, a senior. I recently graduated from James Lee Conan High School as a senior about a month and a couple of days ago. And this upcoming fall in 2021, I will be going to the University of Illinois at Chicago, planning to major in computer science. We still got that old pun up there. Chase, I know you find that funny. It's cheesy, but it still feels great. It's an all-time classic. Everybody should be laughing right now. And then my partner.
Hello guys, my name is Labdi, and I apologize for being late, but just came home like 2 seconds ago. But just like Ryan, I graduated from Conant High School, go Cougars, and I will now be at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, go Illini. But yeah, nice to meet you guys for week 4.
Yep. So once a Cougar, I guess we'll always stay a Cougar, and we'll see what happens in the future. So guys, let's get down to today's agenda for the last day of June. Crazy to think that we've already flown by this first month of summer. Going to get started off with a quick little recap, talking about our next month's schedule. We covered that yesterday as well, but just making sure we're all on the same page. Then going to our web product development special with a this or that, recapping what we accomplished last week with our project, and then continuing to make some progress this week as well. So first things first, a quick little recap about next month, July.
All right, so we have a little bit of a change, as Ryan said, and a couple of you guys had brought up the concerns, but we've been going through these changes for this week, Monday, Tuesday. Here's the third time. We will be moving the weeks here. I will annotate, just like Ryan.
Can you also so it's like from July 15th to August 1st?
Yes, exactly. So July 15th.
Like if something happens, can you just give like a reminder on Google Classroom, like things will be coming back again, like at August?
Yeah, definitely. We'll be up in there updating you guys. So we're gonna try to make sure there's no confusion, and you guys will see updates in the Google Classroom. But yeah, as I was saying, these last 2 weeks, including the 15th of July, will be canceled because both Ryan and I will be out of town. All of this came up really suddenly because I guess someone got accepted to something that she didn't know about. But yeah, yeah, we both of us will be out of town. Therefore, we had to move it in order to keep those a certain number of weeks of Tech Bytes on for you guys. So we will be finishing our projects. We'll be finishing all of the topics we have planned out for you guys. But these last 2 weeks of July, including the 15th, will be transferred over to the first 2 weeks of August.
Yep, and as a reminder, tomorrow we do have video gaming hour, and then these next 2 weeks, the 4th and the 11th, you guys will be having Lavdi. We'll be leading all the classes, as I won't be here for those 2 weeks additionally in July. So you guys will be seeing much more Lavdi. Just a quick little personal note there, but hopefully you guys enjoy and make some more progress there as well. Alrighty, well, let's move on towards today's this or that, talking about which one do we prefer. I think the answer is obvious for me, but let's hear what you guys got to say. Are we going with, if we had to choose a laptop or a desktop operating system, would we go with a Mac or a Windows PC? Let's hear it.
Windows.
Windows, easily.
Wow, okay. Parito saying a Mac. Bjorn saying a desktop. Okay, yeah, so yeah, feel free to drop a desktop or a laptop too. Desktop or a laptop, and a Mac or a PC if you choose either one. Yadu and Ishan going Windows as well. Bjorn saying Windows 10. Bjorn, did you see the new Windows 11 update, which is going to come out later this year?
I haven't yet.
That's okay.
They actually made the whole UI very Mac-like.
Yeah, exactly. The whole glass.
Start panel, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty obvious to see where they're getting their influence from.
That's why, guys. Go for Macs.
So why Windows? Is it because you guys haven't tried a Mac? Because I used to be like that before, like high school, Windows only.
My school computers used Macs. And
Windows is always
I
better.
just use Windows for my home PC, so yeah.
Okay.
I can say one thing, Macs do cost a lot more than what computers are supposed to cost you, but their quality, like their UI, is so much better than Windows.
It's the Apple specialty fee, but that is true. If you want to get the same laptop, like you could probably get like a Lenovo or an HP, much cheaper. Well, it's also a question of like if your applications on Mac, like I know Avanish, you've asked in the past about how you can develop actual applications. In order to develop for the App Store, you do need a Mac. Apple's like so exclusive with that. They want to make sure that you're fully delved in their ecosystem, but they haven't got me there. I still have an Android for a phone, so don't get on me. But it's how these companies' marketing tactics in order to get you fully drawn in. But I think for like also gaming purposes, probably Windows. I wouldn't be gaming on a Mac because this thing starts throttling if you put too much, if you start doing too much activity. So, alrighty, well, great to see that we got a healthy balance, but more people leaning towards the Windows side. We might have to convert you guys back onto the Mac side eventually once Apple starts to cut down on their prices as well. So let's move on towards our project, which we're going to keep on continuing to work on for our web product development. We unveiled a couple weeks ago. It's a text-based adventure game involving some user elements from HTML, our HTML for the structure of the website, eventually making our game look nice with some CSS and then a logic, all that being handled in our JavaScript. We're making a game where the user is responsible for the outcome, where they are able to control whatever happens. Last week, we worked on creating the initial scenario, and then we started adding some buttons in order to make the user interface, and now we have to work on towards what happens with the storyline, talking more about that.
Yep. And just like Ryan said a couple seconds ago, last week's recap is basically we did a little bit of HTML. In fact, most of the HTML that we will do, because we created those two buttons that we will be clicking, and we presented the initial scenario. So we created a text field or a paragraph tag. But yeah, that was the most HTML that we will most likely do throughout the whole project. And we did present the initial scenario, so just added a single string in an array. And today,
we're going to keep on continuing to work with the chain of logic. We got the initial buttons last week, along with the initial scenario, but now we have to see what happens if the user goes on a certain path, seeing how we can create some functions which will hold all of the code required to keep on moving through the storyline. So we'll come up with that more today as well. And looking at how to build a character. So we're eventually going to have a character we talked about last week whose health will be changing throughout our game. So looking at the beginning steps of that as well. So with all that in mind, how about we move on towards our coding website, JS Fiddle. Guys, the link, as always, will be in the chat if you want to follow along with my version. But I would recommend, like always, if you guys want to pull it up on your own, to code as well. So here's the shared link, and I'll drop the link towards the website as well if you want to create your own fiddle to type out some code by yourself as well. All right. So as everybody's coming on towards the fiddle, let's going to do a quick recap of what we did accomplish last week. As you guys can see, if I hit run, hit the start game button, we are able to see our initial scenario, what option we, our initial scenario, and then the options we have. Now, not only are the options being displayed in the text, but also our buttons are changing. So if I hit run, initially they're just option 1, option 2, but if I hit start game, we talked about last week how we can use our JavaScript in order to manipulate our HTML called something called the DOM, the document object model. Now, we also talked about how this works. Does anybody remember what this line of code allows us to do? If I say go to this line of code, anybody want to take a shot at what this does?
It's like the element one, like which, and then you said like inner HTML, so it goes to like the HTML part, and then element one is button one, and that's like the first button it's going to show. And then since you put that in the function display options, it's going to display it.
Exactly, yep. So as a reminder, guys, so this line of code was last week's highlight. We were talking about how this document.getElementById .innerHTML, this huge line of code, it allows us to change our HTML elements. It allows us to manipulate and change some of the properties going on in order to change what we're being displayed with on our website. So as a reminder, this document.getElementById, this gets us a reference, and then the .innerHTML part allows us to actually change the text aspect, the text property of our button. And then here, who can tell us what is this, what are we setting our button text equal to? What is this a reference of?
It's gonna like the, wait, which one?
The highlighted part, the first options.
Oh, okay.
You're at the position, where is that?
Maybe like what I just said, like the start, like the button one start game. That's one of like the first options. Like the first option is like if you click the start game, then it'll show the first options Mars, like it said earlier. Like if you go up, like in the variable, can you scroll up? It says like var first options equal to Mars. So that's what will like print out if you just click it. Like when the function is initialized, like by you clicking it.
Exactly. Yep, Avanish. So you were just talking about how it's the first option, right? And we're
Yeah.
a 0th index, right? And we always know that in arrays, just like in Python, in JavaScript as well, they always, in any coding language, arrays always start at the 0th index. So we're starting at the 0th position, then the first, and the second, and so on. So we're referring to the 0th index in order to display first option. Now,
Zero, I just have one question. Like, all the zero index is like technically the first encoding for all coding languages, right?
yep. So for all coding languages, if I have any array, it doesn't matter. We're always, so I have, say I have, letters. They could be A, B, C. Just pretending there's some strings, right? Quotation marks around them. Always,
Yeah.
the letter A, the first position is always the 0th index. The second position is always the first index, and so on.
Okay.
Yep. Alrighty, so now let's move on towards what we'll be accomplishing for today. We've got the initial scenario along with the first two options, and now it's going to be time to start connecting our buttons, which are presented with the different options, to functions, and then moving on throughout a sort of storyline, adding more elements to our array as well. For the first,
I'm just asking this for like later, but are you gonna import some modules like the Kinter? I think that's for Python, but any modules for like JS, JavaScript to make like the background and stuff?
yep. So I need to remember with our background, like we talked about in the past, like right now, if I just do the background, right? I believe.
Oh yeah, you use CSS because it like covers the design please, right?
Exactly. Yep. So if I, for example, let's want to do quick little CSS right here, change the background color to blue. Pretty bad in the eyes, but we can eventually make this look better. That'll be like the focus for like the last 2 weeks if we'd like to make our game look better. But just a quick sneak peek right there.
Okay.
Yep. But good connection right there. Just like how we can use Chikinter and Python to make our program look nicer, CSS is the equivalent of making our website look nicer.
But just wanted to add, there are JavaScript modules or libraries that you can install in JavaScript. They just don't do the styling or the coloring. They'll add in like functionalities if you want to call an API or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And on that topic, there's also other things like frameworks we've shared. I remember we used to share them in our fun facts last year. Other frameworks which allow us to have pre-built websites with a lot of nice styling, like something called Bootstrap, or there's other frameworks like React and Vue. We've talked about these in the past. Not going to go too much into depth today, but they allow us to have a template of a nice looking website, and then we can eventually add more code, more logic, whatever we'd like for the website to do. So a lot of options, definitely. Alrighty, so now let's get towards creating the functions which will be connected towards our buttons and then moving throughout our adventure game story. So first things first, let's kind of create a function. We'll say function. We'll just call this function options1. Open close parentheses, add the braces. And then I'm going to do the same thing for our function 2. So function options2, open close parentheses, add the braces as well. And then before I do add any code, I'm going to connect our buttons to our functions. So who remembers, to connect our button to a function, we do one property we got to add. What is that called?
The on click.
Exactly, yeah, because we're literally saying on the click of the button, call this function. So on click, we're going to set it equal to, the first button is going to be set equal to the first options1 function. And then we can follow the same mindset for our second button as well. So on click will be equal to the function options2. Make sure that our buttons are working. I'll say hi. Make some alerts. Always a good idea to test out if your function's basic stuff is working before you start adding more code. So we'll alert hi and hello. So option 1, hi, and then option 2, hello. So our buttons are working a-okay. Alrighty, so now we have to keep track of what is going down in our game, right? So if I hit run, hit start game. Okay, that is interesting. Looks like we were just working, but did we add or change anything? Let's see. Oh, so remember, our ID is used so that we can identify any HTML element and then go back and change it. So just like we have an ID for all of our buttons, an ID for our paragraph tags also is there so that we can change the text of that specific text element. So now if I hit run, there we go. We got the two options showing up. Now, so we are initially being told what planet do we want to visit, Mars or Saturn? What we're going to start doing now is using some past concepts which I'll ask you guys about in order to move through the storyline, whether it be option 1 or option 2. So initially we got the option for the user to choose Mars or Saturn. Now if they click the button of Mars, they're going to be presented then with another scenario along with 2 more different options. And if they go with Saturn, another scenario along with the other 2 options to proceed in the game. Now, what would be a good idea? Because I could either create these 2 functions for our buttons, or I could probably create 10, if we have a story of, say, 8 to 10 different events. Create 8 different functions. Now, that would get pretty repetitive, right? If each button, each time we would call it a different function. What would make sense? So what if I were to have some type of counter, maybe? So counter 1, we'll set that equal to 0. And then what we'll do is probably increment this counter by 1 every time our button is clicked for an option in order to present the next scenario. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then the same mentality would also apply for the second button, so counter 2. And then we would simply, every time we present a scenario, up the counter by 1. So the next time we click the button, we're presenting the next scenario onwards. And this will also be helpful with our arrays because we'll be able to access those elements and present those options as well. So before we do start coding, it's time for sort of some fun right here where we're being told we're going to a different planet, Mars or Saturn. If we choose Mars, what should happen?
I guess you should like call it. You come across something like, oh no, or oh no, or oh like first of all, should we do like a good thing or a bad thing?
Your choice. It could be either. And
I
Oh,
want
no,
to make it like more intense. So
Oh no, you landed on a planet. Mars is actually a war ground that humans have never knew about.
oh no. How about it has to do something with Mars, the god of war?
okay, we could definitely do that. So in order to hold our scenario, I'm going to create a global variable. We'll call that scenario, and so that equals to just blank quotation marks for now. And then we'll change this global variable every time we present a new scenario. So what we're going to do here is say, so we'll say for options 1, we'll say if our counter is initially at 0. So we're saying that we're going to go with the Mars option. So this is, we'll say if Mars option is selected. So Anish, what were you saying with the Mars god?
It's like maybe, oh no, you awoke the god of horse, or you just like crashed. Oh no, like the atmosphere corrupted your jet engine, you're crashing.
Okay, all right. So
Something like that. I actually changed my mind on the god of war because I don't think it has anything to do with the god. So I'll just say like some problem in the atmosphere of Mars crash, like the dysfunctionalized like your rocket, and it just starts beeping and crashing.
okay, so if how about we go, if we're gonna move on that fast in our storyline, then we'll go like 5 to 6 different scenarios. Then we'll do on the way to your location, your spaceship ran out of fuel and hit an asteroid. Then what should the 2 options be? Do you stop at a different planet to look for life, or
You try to like adapt or colonize.
fix the spaceship yourself? How about that? All right, so now
Like okay, because like some of the arrows are blocking some of the code.
the cursors, yeah. So if you guys want to move on up so people can follow, Curious Cat, I'm not sure who that is, but all right. So now that we got our scenario, we have to put the 2 options in our array, which can occur, right? So our first option was let's gonna do comma and then add stop elsewhere. We'll stop at a different planet. And then our second option is we're going to add the option of fix yourself, fix the ship, or just fix ship. All right, and then we're going to have to start displaying our array, our options, right, using our array. So what I'm going to do is we can actually display the options outside of, there we go, all right. So what we're going to do is, in order to change our HTML, what line of code am I going to refer back to? We were talking about it earlier. Which one? You remember? If we want to manipulate an HTML,
Here, is it inner HTML?
Yep. So we're going to use that long line of code once again. I'm going to do document.get element by capital B, capital I, ID, and then getting the ID of our button 1, and then dot, like Avanishi said, inner HTML, changing the text property, and setting this equal to the first options. But instead of it being at the 0th or the first array, we could just do the first position, right? But what I'm going to start doing now, instead of having to refer to each specific position in our array, we're going to increment our counter by 1. So counter 1 plus plus. And then if we're incrementing the value of our counter 1, what we're going to do is display, instead of accessing the first position, we're just going to abstract a bit and just access whatever position our counter is currently on. And the same will apply for our second button. So we can just copy and paste that line of code.
What did you do like up like in the first part of the code, like near first var, first options, var, second options?
Just added the 2 options we talked about. We can stop.
Oh, okay.
The center of the radius reach that told
So
it's not going
instead
to
of
be
accessing button 1's text property, we're going to access button 2's text property now. Now, if we start thinking in the long term, right, we got our first scenario. We're probably going to be utilizing a lot of copy and pasting, right, for the scenario, for the options, displaying the different options, right? So it could become a lot of repeated code. Now, one of our main objectives through product development and all of our courses is to not only learn computer programming more, but also to become better developers who can use code in an efficient way. Now, the goal is to not just copy and paste a bunch of code, but to abstract. Now, the idea with abstraction is to have code which does the same functionality, but have less code and organize your code in a better manner. So what we're going to do today is, instead of me going ahead and copy and pasting this 6 different times for our scenario, is we're going to create a button, not a button, a function, which will handle all of this repeatedness for us. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to just come in and say abstracting, presenting of scenarios below. So what I'm going to do is create a separate function. I'm going to say function, display information. And this will be responsible for displaying the scenario and changing the text of the 2 buttons. And then what I'm going to do is put in something in between these parentheses. So I'm just going to say, we'll just say scenario. I think it should be fine if they're both the same. So who can remind us, what is this called if it's in between parentheses? What am I passing in right here?
A variable.
Yep, it is a variable which we're passing into our function. And does that variable have a name? It's a, starts with a P.
Parameter.
Exactly, yep. So now if I add our opening close braces, now instead of me checking every time these 3 lines of code, repeating every time, what I'm going to do now is just change our HTML elements from our function. I'm going to say document dot get capital E element, capital D by, capital ID, accessing the scenarios ID, paste that in, dot inner HTML, accessing the text property, and setting that equal to whatever scenario we are passing in as a parameter. And now we're going to do the same thing with these other 2 lines of code. Instead of me copy and pasting these lines of code every time, we're just going to paste them once in our display information function, and then set our button text equal to whatever value the counter is on. So if I'm at the 0th position, it's going to display the 0th option initially, right? Now if we increment the value of our counter variable by 1, we're going to be presented with the next option, which is a stop elsewhere or the fix the ship
Yeah,
option.
what did you change to counter? Because my counter variable, counter 1 and counter 2 are both still 0.
They should be at 1. So are we going to increment? Remember, increase the value by 1 when we hit the options 1 button. Are you doing that?
No, I didn't. Let me do it now. Count. Okay, yeah, I did it now.
Okay. Now, one thing also is, right now, what we're doing is putting both options in 2 separate arrays. But we're forgetting, if I were to hit the button Saturn, then different options should pop up, right? So instead of us holding 2 different options in 2 different arrays, I'm going to hold it. If we're going with the left button storyline, all the left buttons is going to be stored in 1 array. So move the fixed ship option towards the first options array, and then we'll add what happens if we go to Saturn in just a bit. Now, this will change how we display information, right? We're not going to be displaying the whatever's at the first options array at the first position. So if I'm accessing these positions, who can remind me? The Mars at this what position?
0.
Yep, this next one is at the,
One.
yep, and then 2. So instead of me accessing the second options array, looking at the first position, we're going to have to somehow access the first and the second position. Now, if I were to add more options, then we would have the third position and the fourth position, right? More different options for the user to click. Eventually, the storyline goes on. So if I have my counter 1 at, if we increment the value by 1, we're going to be able to access the first position. But in order to access the second position, what we're going to do is access the counter 1 variable plus 1. So we can get both of these options and display them. So I'll show you what that means in terms of code. So if you go back out, all right. And what we're going to do now is say, so the first button's text is going to be equal to our counter 1 variable. And then our second variable's text is going to be equal to the counter 1 plus 1. So this is saying whatever position we're looking at, look at the next position on over so we can access the next elements as well. So if I hit run, let's see that's an actual application. If I hit run, start game. Did we change one of the text again? What is going on? Let's see.
Maybe try refreshing the page.
Oh, well, what happened? Oh, here.
Um,
All right, guys. Remember, so as we're going through, if you guys want to code, comment on your own copies, but let's not add any random pieces of code as we're going to the actual copy. So let's see. So we had it if counter 1.
Why does it say scenario J?
Yeah, it looks like some people were just commenting and adding lines. Remember, guys, let's not, on the actual copy, let's not add any code randomly, unless you guys want to ask and add. But so I think this was if counter 1 is equal to 1. And remember, we were incrementing the value of our counter by 1 as well. And then we could just paste this scenario back up. Thank you, Avanish, for putting that in. All right, so that should be fixed for now. So this is if our Mars option is selected, then we're going to do the first scenario. So now what we have to do is we got our scenario, but we have to actually call the function to change what is displayed on our buttons, right? So what I'm going to do is just simply inside of our if statement, paste that function name, and then we have to pass the parameter, right? The variable which is holding the scenario. So just going to paste the variable scenario. And now this variable called scenario is going to go down as a parameter passed down through our function. And then this variable scenario will be accessible in our display information function. Alrighty, so now if we go ahead and hit run, I think we should be good. So start game, we got our 2 options. Which planet do we want to go to, Mars or Saturn? We'll go Mars, and then there we go. We're displayed with the next scenario along with the corresponding options to keep on moving on.
Mine just stays there. It doesn't do anything.
They cannot rotate the file.
There's probably, I'm guessing, some type of HTML, something letters off. You want to paste the link while you're here?
Just posted it.
All right.
Exactly.
Alrighty, so as we're getting that fixed up as well, to conclude with today, we're going to do the same thing for our Saturn option. So what happens if we click the Saturn button, right? So same mentality applies. We're going to go to our options 2 button, and instead of incrementing the value of counter 1, we're going to increment the value of counter 2. So counter 2 plus plus. And now I'm going to do the same thing. So if counter 2 is equal to 1, we got to come up with a scenario, a different scenario, right? So what could it be? Instead, we'll say you're on the way to your location and you spot aliens. And you spot different types of life. What's going to happen? Do you interact with the aliens or keep on going? How about that?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, and now what we're going to do is same thing. We're going to call our display information function. So I'm going to display information and then passing in our scenario. Now, instead of using display information, what I'm going to do is create a separate display information function called display information 2. And the reason why we're going to do that is so that we can display our correct array. Instead of using first options, we're going to use our second options array. Second options change that in both places, and instead of accessing counter 1, we're going to access counter 2 because the counter 2 variable has been hit. So just copy and paste that same function and changing which array we're accessing and then which counter we're looking at as well. Now, we've got our scenario, but we haven't added our options to our array. So let's go ahead and do that now. Go to our second options array and add the 2 options. So we had interact with aliens, and our second option was keep going. And now if I hit run, start game, we already checked the Mars option out. We got the 2 options. If I hit run, start game, now go to Saturn, and there we go. We got the different option popping up. Do we interact with the aliens or keep on going? Anything you see, Lovely? I'll take a look as well.
Yeah. So the reason why it's not working is if counter 1 is equal to 0, Avanish, then that scenario or whatever is inside that conditional will work. But as soon as you call that function, your counter 1, which was originally 0, is now 1. So everything that's inside that conditional, if counter 1 is equal to 0, does not run because counter 1 is actually 1. So you would just change that to, oh wait.
So remember, I think like if we're clicking options 1 out of each, the value of counter is going to go up by 1, right? So instead of looking at the 0, we're going to look if the value is a 1.
Oh, so yeah, that's what I did. I did do counter 1 plus plus, and then if counter 1 equal to 0. So it should be like equal to 1.
If equal to 1, I thought, yeah.
Oh yeah, now it works.
Cool. Yeah.
And that's, a part of the game. Debugging, guys, we did some right there as well. Thinking through, brainstorming, debugging, not only part of the web development process, but also like we saw yesterday with our app development process, this idea of coding and creating, it all comes together full circle. So guys, that brings us till the end for this week's web product development. We just saw what we accomplished today, a quick recap. We added more options, started the same idea, and now next week as we continue, the same idea will apply. Keep on developing more of the storyline with the conditionals going till the end throughout the next couple of weeks.
Can I screen share at the end? I have something to show, like in this game thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye. See you tomorrow in video gaming hour.
Bye, Prithos. So we have the abstracted functions and then 2 options. Same mentality we'll be applying throughout the next couple of weeks. As always, guys, this link will be posted to our Google Classroom. If you guys missed anything, want to check over what we wrote as well. As always, guys, thank you so much for coming out here today. Hopefully, you guys are having a fun time. Remember, we, like Prithos said, got video gaming hour tomorrow. It'll be the last time you guys will see me for about a month, and then we'll be coming back in August. And yeah, guys, take care.
What game will we be doing tomorrow?
A different game. It will not be Among Us. So stay tuned for that, all right?
You do backyard again?
Yeah, sure. But we'll have to make sure that backyard is working because it was actually a beta version, so they're still developing as we went through. So we'll need to make sure that it's still on the site. If it is, then yeah, probably.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow.
Can I screen share?